What's going on, guys, and welcome to episode 514 of #AskGSM. Here today for Wednesday, October 4th, 2023. I'm Graham GSM Matthews. Hope you guys are doing well, having a great week so far. Very busy past week, very busy week to come. Let's get right into it. If you have a question to answer for me on the show, for me to answer here on the show, that is, you can tweet me on the Twitter machine at WrestleRant with the #AskGSM. Find me on Facebook as well, facebook.com/graham.gsm.matthews. Drop a comment on the post I usually put up on Tuesday nights, if not on the wall itself. And last but certainly not least, drop your question down below in the comment section on this very video. I'll include your question in next week's edition. We'll get right into it here, starting with the YouTube questions from Micah Duzza. Their first question was, do you think Jade Cargill will debut as the trade to SmackDown instead of Cody Rhodes? Yeah, I mean, it's possible. The whole point of a trade, though, is to trade someone. I mean, at the same time, though, they did kind of do a trade. This was years ago. They didn't really officially brand it as a trade. But I remember when they had Jason Jordan, who was on SmackDown in 2017, back when the brand split meant a bit more than it does now, to say the least. Not that it really meant all that much back then either. But they had Jason Jordan go from SmackDown to Raw to be the whole, the whole Kurt Angle illegitimate son thing and whatever. And then in the following night, SmackDown, I think, if it wasn't the next night, it was like a week or two later, they had Shelton Benjamin be announced as the newest member of SmackDown because Daniel Bryan, who was the SmackDown GM at the time, said, well, we gave them one of our talents, so in return, Kurt Angle, who was the then Raw GM, kind of helped negotiate, bring Shelton Benjamin back to WWE, and put him on SmackDown in exchange for Jason Jordan. So you could make that argument, but not that WWE obviously always does long-term storytelling, they don't. I would like to think that they brought Jey Uso to Raw with someone already in mind to bring from Raw to SmackDown, because they did that at Payback, which was weeks and weeks ago, well before they knew Jade Cargill was coming in. So it's not like they did that Jey Uso angle at the beginning of September with the idea in mind, oh, we'll just debut Jade Cargill on SmackDown at some point in exchange. That doesn't make a lot of sense. To me, a trade, because at that point, Raw is just getting an extra person. SmackDown lost the top star, and they're getting a top star in his return, but Raw still has plus one person than they did previously. Not that they really give a shit about this stuff. I mean, they bring people up to Raw and SmackDown constantly without making it even. It's not like Raw and SmackDown have to have a set number of people. They release people constantly. They fucking bring people up constantly. Have people switch shows constantly at random. It doesn't really matter. But if you really want to call it a trade, then someone from Raw should go to SmackDown. And I don't think Jade Cargill is going to SmackDown anyway. I mean, he sent that question in a week ago, but it was but reported earlier this week, I think yesterday, that they're eyeing the Raw brand for Jade. So it's not even like she's going to SmackDown anyway. And I wouldn't even put her on SmackDown. You hold off on the Bianca-Jade match. That's a money match for down the road. Her and Charlotte. Do not rush into that. I mean, on Raw, you have her and Nia, which sounds fucking awful. Please keep her far away from Nia Jax, although I'm sure that's exactly where this is going, and them building up Nia Jax. But you could do them and her, Jade and Rhea, Jade and Raquel, and pretty much anyone else on the Raw roster. They haven't really bothered to build up yet. I love Tegan Nox. I love the fact she's getting television time. I'm sure she will be squashed by Jade Cargill in time. Just give it not too much longer, and I'm sure we're going to get that on Raw one of these weeks. I hate to say it, but I'm sure that's where we're going with this. So, no, that will not work. I wouldn't do that anyway. It really should be Cody or someone else from the Raw brand going to SmackDown in exchange from Jay going to Raw. It's the longest trade of all time. I don't know why it's taking this long from a realistic standpoint for someone to be traded. It shouldn't really take that fucking long for them to figure out who from Raw is going to SmackDown. From a booking standpoint, though, they're holding off because they really don't want to move Cody yet, I would assume. And Cody has more to do on Raw before leaving to SmackDown, I would think. His next question, what is your favorite Tamina Snuka match? Would it be fair to say her last one? No, I kid. My favorite Tamina, I don't have a favorite Tamina Snuka match. Honestly, is she still in the company, right? I mean, you would never know. She hasn't been on TV in many fucking months. I know she's the daughter of a Hall of Famer, but they've let go of second-generation talent before. I don't give a shit. She's fucking terrible. She seems like a sweetheart of a person, and all the women backstage like her, but, I mean, I know I've never been the biggest Natalya fan, but I think Natalya has a lot more value to that company than fucking Tamina, but that's just me. If we're going to pick out a favorite Tamina match here, literally almost none come to mind except for maybe two that I think might be her best. In almost 15 years of working on the main roster, that's not good, But I'm sure the matches with Natalya when she first got called up were okay for especially that standard of women's wrestling in 2010. But the two matches that come to mind, not that they're barn burners, but they're at least two of the better Tamina Snuka matches I've seen. One, her and Beth Phoenix from Elimination Chamber 2012 for the Divas Championship, I think it was. And then she also, many, many years later, also challenged Bayley for the SmackDown Women's Championship, I think at Money in the Bank, which on paper sounded terrible. But they ended up not having an awful match, and Bayley's great, so that's really no surprise. And if anyone can carry Tamina to an okay match, it would be Bayley. Again, it wasn't a barn burner, but it was probably Tamina's best match of all time. So those are the two that come to mind. The next, and by the way, I haven't put all these questions in a doc yet, so if they're all over the place, I apologize. The last YouTube question here from Micah Does It, his third one was, if you had to pick 4 wrestlers to go from AEW to WWE in a faction to start an invasion angle, who are the wrestlers that you would pick? That's a great question, because they started all of a sudden, when I read your question earlier, started thinking of, this guy could go there, this guy could go there. Like, I don't know if you mean go to AEW in terms of, oh no, I'm sorry, you said go from AEW to WWE. Fuck, man, I thought you said WWE to AEW. I had all these answers of like, oh, bring the Bloodline to AEW, or AJ Styles and Finn Balor. Fuck, you said AEW to WWE. That really messes it up. I mean, I think the Elite would make the most sense. That's the easiest answer. That's the laziest answer. But they do embody AEW. They've never been in WWE before on the main roster under a full-time deal. I mean, like bringing back Daniel Bryan or Jericho, like, okay, cool, like, who cares? I mean, I guess that could add some legitimacy, like if people see Jericho again leading these no-namers, to the WWE audience, that is, not in the grand scheme of things. That might give them more credibility. But I think an invasion angle, quote-unquote, which never go well in wrestling for the most part, but an invasion angle with Kenny Omega, the Bucks, and Adam Page all coming to WWE at the same time, which could have happened recently, but they re-signed to the AEW, and it could have happened 5 years ago, but they went to AEW instead. That would have been interesting. I wouldn't trust WWE to do right by it, or for all 4 guys to be better off in the end. Like, I could see them getting some buzz initially before fading off into obscurity and whatever, because they just don't have any long-term plans for them, specifically the Bucks, because that tag team division can be very hit or miss at times. If they don't want to have a million matches with the Judgment Day, I mean, that's probably what they would fall into. They probably made the right choice by sticking with AEW. But in all seriousness, it would probably be the Elite. I think that would just make the most sense, just because we've never seen them in WWE before. They're big enough stars to where they could make a splash, and it would be cool to see them mix it up with the various people in WWE. The Facebook questions, starting with Noel. Their first question was, now that Adam, a.k.a. Edge, is with AEW, who do you see him wrestling with after the Christian rivalry is over? I mean, any number of people, really. He mentioned a bunch of names in that press conference the other day after the WrestleDream show. The first name that comes to mind for me is fucking Samoa Joe. I mean, I was already thinking that before he even said Samoa Joe. And then, yeah, like, you could say Kenny Omega, like, that'd be cool. That just wouldn't make sense right now because, you know, they're both baby faces, so I'm not really sure why they would face each other. And it's not like Kenny Omega's the champion. Him and MJF would be interesting. I don't want to see him beat MJF for the championship, but MJF is also a baby face right now. Him and Jay White would be sick, though. I do. I do think that. Jay White or probably Samoa Joe. Joe, I mean, I hate when they fucking build him up to do this sort of stuff where he just loses, like to MJF and to CM Punk and all these other guys. But he's just so fucking good. I mean, it's almost worth it for the promos alone. And even the matches are great, though. The matches aren't bad. Joe's matches have been very good this year. I would probably say Samoa Joe. Samoa Joe and Edge, to me, sounds like the match to do. Probably after he loses, after Edge beats Christian and whatever. I don't know how long that's going to go on for, but at some point down the road, maybe build up Samoa Joe in the meantime. Do Joe and Edge, please. And I'm sure we will get that at some point. If Edge wants it, we will get it. Their second question, do you see Becky Lynch losing the NXT Women's Championship to make a star for the NXT Women's Division, or losing it to Jade upon her NXT debut? So, like I said earlier, I don't think Jade is going to NXT. I would book it that way. If Becky's going to do these open challenges, and there's so many fucking open challenges in wrestling, you have Jade answer, and you have Jade take the title from her, and she can also appear on Raw at the same time. I would do that. I've said that before. I think that would make the most sense. They're not going to do that. I think Jade is just going straight to the Raw roster. She's not wasting any time in NXT. For the amount of money they're probably paying her, I get it. I just would think they would want her to improve a little bit in developmental. That's what it's fucking for. Before going to the main roster, but whatever. So, yeah, I mean, the Jade Cargill thing would be fine. You would also be making a new star by having her lose to Jade. So both of your questions can be correct. If it's not Jade, and it doesn't look like it will be Jade, yes, she should, obviously, she has to lose it to someone in NXT. She should not be losing it to fucking, like, Charlotte or Rhea or someone that's already established on the main roster. And Tegan, it's funny, I wouldn't mind Tegan Nox beating her. Tegan Nox is not beating her. That would be cool, though, just because Tegan is on the main roster, but she's not established, she's not over. She never held the NXT Women's Championship, so that would be cool. It's not happening. I don't really need to see her losing to, like, Roxanne Perez is already established. She doesn't really gain anything by beating Becky. I would have her drop it, probably. If they're ready for Lyra to take the title, I mean, she could very well drop it at the Halloween Havoc show in a couple weeks. I know that's the next date where she's defending it. So it could be on that show. I wouldn't mind if it was on that show. If it was at the Halloween Havoc show in a couple weeks, it'll probably be Lyra, if I had to take a guess. And if not Lyra, I'm trying to think who else in that division. Fucking Kiana James plays. Indy doesn't need the championship. She's already on the main roster anyway. I know she was in that number 1 contenders match last night. Yeah, Lyra to me probably makes the most sense. Unless it was Tiffany, but I don't see them running that back and giving her a third opportunity. I mean, that would also be fine too. But I get the feeling that they're done with that, moving on, and Tiffany's not getting the belt back. I wouldn't mind it if they did. It's either Tiffany or Lyra. I don't really see anyone else in the division right now that would make sense. Maybe a returning Cora Jade, but she hasn't been on the show in many months. I don't know when they're bringing her back. I don't know when she's ready to come back. So either Cora would be a dark horse. Tiffany I wouldn't mind. Probably Lyra. I don't know if she's ready for that, though. I don't know if the crowd is ready to accept her in that role, because she's not that over, but she is quite good, and having her beat Becky would be quite the endorsement for her. Next couple questions here from Chris L., also from Facebook. His first one was, where do you rate Sting in the all-time list? He has a lengthy and incredibly successful career in many companies like WCW, Impact Wrestling, and AEW. His WWE run may perceive fans to think that he was a washed-up has-been, and his loss to Triple H is not only one of the more idiotic choices they ever made at WrestleMania, but the match ruined everything about him. Excluding his WWE run, where do you rank Sting in the all-time greatest wrestlers list? I mean, the WWE run I didn't mind. That WrestleMania decision was indeed fucking dumb. Very dumb. But it didn't ruin Sting for me. I honestly became a bigger fan of Sting after he went to WWE. I don't know why, but maybe just the presentation of Sting for the most part. I mean, they treated him like an attraction, and he came across great. So, anyway, all-time list, I don't think he's even in the top 10, and I'm a big Sting guy at this point. I love Sting, but there's just so many other people I would put above him. Yeah, he had a lot of success in a lot of different companies. He never had sustained success in WWE. I'm not saying that takes away from his legacy. Don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to be a homer for WWE. But all the companies that you mentioned are secondary to WWE at all times. WCW was, Impact was, and AEW was as well. He's had a great lengthy career, but I would put so many other people in terms of success, just being the best, because he's great at a lot of things. I don't think Sting is the best at any one thing. Aura maybe, but I feel like The Undertaker even hasn't beaten that category. Sting is just cool. But, like, he's had a lot of great matches, but I just feel like there's other people that I would put above that list. Like, I would put Macho Man above him. I mean, Hogan just is Hogan. I mean, I know Sting's obviously had better matches, but Stone Cold, Cena, Rock, like, that's 5 right there. Bret Hart I would put above Sting. Shawn Michaels, among many other people. Again, probably maybe the top 20. Maybe. Like, I'd put Bryan Danielson above him probably. I mean, again, it's all subjective. It's very subjective. He might be in the top 5 for someone and the top 50 for someone else. For me, he'd probably be top 20, closer to the bottom, because there's just so many other people I think had more success at the bigger level than he did. At all the companies that you mentioned, he has had success. I mean, the AEW run, if it never happened, it doesn't really make much of a difference. It's just more of a nostalgia thing, and it's been a great run. But, like, he was never the guy in WWE, the biggest company ever. And even people that weren't the guy in WWE, I would still put above Sting for just other reasons. So, probably 20. I don't know if I would go any, like, 15. I don't know if I would go higher than that, to 15 or 10. But, again, that's just me. And that's coming from a guy that likes Sting. His second question. The hate that Adam Copeland has gotten since arriving in AEW last Sunday is beyond embarrassing and disgraceful of the community. They have called him a turncoat and a traitor, but years ago they had no problem going ballistic when he returned at the Royal Rumble. Meanwhile, those same fans are going wild over Jade Cargill signing with WWE when they trashed her in AEW. Is this hypocrisy or just blatant ignorant tribalism? Of course it's tribalism. I mean, you can say the same thing with the roles reversed as far as people celebrating Edge coming to AEW but calling Jade a turncoat for turning her back on Tony Khan, and you're not appreciative of what he, how he booked you and everything he gave you and for making you a star. I mean, it goes both ways. No company's worse than another. I feel like the AEW fans, the die hard AEW fans and the die hard WWE fans are just as bad as one another. I mean, the tribalism has never been worse. I think it was worse, actually. I'll take that back. It was worse when AEW and NXT were going head-to-head, which ironically is happening again next Tuesday, which I'm looking forward to because it's one night only. They're stacking both shows, I would imagine, so I don't really mind that. But consistently, the Wednesday Night Wars, it was more of a skirmish, but Wednesday Night Wars, they were calling it at the time, from 2019 to 2021, like for a year and a half, it was fucking brutal. It was the entire COVID period, basically. But like, oh, the ratings and this, like, who gives a shit? Who fucking cares, really? At the end of the day, like, people taking sides, just enjoy all wrestling. And if you only enjoy WWE and don't enjoy AEW as much, I'm not saying you have to watch both products, but like, there's no reason to be like, oh, go AEW, fuck AEW, because both, or go WWE, fuck AEW, because both companies benefit from having the competition. Do you think they're putting John Cena and Cody Rhodes on NXT next week if AEW doesn't run a show on Tuesday? Fuck no. Do they need to be on NXT? No, but it's still cool that they are, and I'm looking forward to seeing what happens. So yeah, the tribalism is awful, and the hate that Edge got for that after being a WWE homer for 25 years is just crazy. His last question here, since we are in October and it's Halloween, can you tell me your 5 favorite old school horror movies and your 5 modern day favorite horror movies? I answer this every year, and my answers always change. Horror, like, the funny thing is that I'm not a big horror movie fan, but it depends what horror movie we're talking about here. Like, I don't like, and I got to give a shout out to John Ritland. He gave me the code for it, so I have the movie. Not that it was a bad movie, it's just not my cup of tea. The Midsommar movie, Midsummer, whatever it was called a couple years ago. It's Midsummer. I called it Midsommar for some reason at the time. But, like, the movies that are, like, fucked up like that, the fucked up stuff I don't like. That, Hereditary, I've heard enough about it. I'm all set. Thank you. Terrifier just seems fucking terrifying. And it's not like slasher stuff. Like, they just do fucked up weird stuff. And I don't really like that. It makes me uncomfortable. But I do like the Friday the 13th stuff. Not that they don't do fucked up stuff in those movies, but it's so ridiculous that it's like, okay, I don't mind watching this. I love the original Halloween. I've liked all of the Halloween sequels in recent years, specifically the original sequel in 2018. I mean, there's an original sequel from many years ago, but you know what I mean. The remake in 2018. That was awesome. I love that one. The 2 subsequent ones weren't amazing, but I enjoyed them. So I love watching the Halloween movies. I like the Friday the 13th movies. I'm not a big Nightmare on Elm Street fan. I've seen a few of them, maybe 1 or 2. I've seen Freddy vs. Jason a few times. That was good. The Friday the 13th movies, they're just so fucking ridiculous that I love them. That's probably my favorite franchise as far as like favorite horror movies and stuff like that. Other than that, I actually just saw, it's not a horror movie, but I just saw Alien for the first time a week or 2 ago, and I thought it was pretty good. It wasn't like, to me, I mean, I can understand why it's revered as a classic, because it is, for a lot of different reasons. Like, I didn't sit there thinking, oh my god, this is my favorite movie ever, but, for the time, it was a pretty good movie, so I reviewed that on Letterboxd a couple weeks ago, I think last week. So Alien, I just watched, and I enjoyed that. I'm trying to think of other, like, movies. I mean, it's not a horror movie, but similar slasher type style movie. But Happy Death Day, when that came out a couple years ago on Friday the 13th, actually, I think in 2017, I really like that movie. That was one of my favorite horror movies in recent years. There have been other ones that I've seen. I just watched, Barbarian, I think it was. That came out a year ago. I only watched it for the first time earlier this year. That was weird, but it was good, but it was weird. I enjoyed that. Yeah, there's a lot that just don't come to mind, but as far as like the classics, I would have to go Friday the 13th, Halloween. Those are my top 2. Not a big Nightmare on Elm Street fan. I'm trying to think of other ones from that period. Those are the ones that come to mind. I'm sure there's other ones, but those are the ones that come to mind. Let's see here. And that was his last question. So we move on to the Twitter questions here. Like I said, I'm not organized today. I apologize. At Iwagu91, their first question was, your thoughts on how Shawn Michaels has been handling NXT? I think he's been doing a pretty bang-up job recently. It's not like the best thing going in wrestling, like he said on that media call last week. But, you know, I think he's done a good job with it. I've been enjoying the show currently. I'm looking forward to next Tuesday's show. I really like No Mercy. I thought No Mercy was probably their best special all year. And that was at Battleground. I'm going to be at the next show, too. Not that I'm an NXT homer, but they're just in places where I'm, like, they were in Mass back in May. They're going to be in Connecticut in December, so I'm looking forward to it. But, yeah, no, I think he's done a good job. The booking style is simple. He's toning down on the dumb character stuff and kind of honing in on the in-ring action. They're also creating new stars. They've got good storylines, long-term stuff, short-term stuff, star power. It's fun. It's a fun show to watch right now. They can't rely on the main roster stuff forever, obviously, but it's working for now, and even the non-main roster stuff is also enjoyable and engaging. So I'm enjoying the NXT product currently, probably more now than at any other point in the last 2 years since the relaunch. I mean, I enjoyed the original NXT more during, like, the black and gold era, but beyond that, since the relaunch 2 years ago, this is the best that it's been, in my opinion. His second question, do you think that Chad Gable will be the one to end Gunther's lengthy and fantastic IC title reign? I feel like I answered this a lot, but yes, I do. I don't think it'll be Johnny Gargano. Very happy to see him back on Monday. It wasn't Ciampa. It's got to be Gable. That's the story they're telling long term. It should be Gable. I think it will be Gable. It's more a matter of when than if. I feel like they might do it at the Rumble. I know that's not for another 3.5 months, but that's what I would do personally. There's enough people for Gunther to defend against in the meantime where they can kind of stretch it out between now and then. If not at WrestleMania, but probably at the Rumble. I assume Gunther's going to have a higher profile match at Mania than facing Chad Gable. At Reborn Again, John Ritland's first question from the Twitter machine, also on YouTube, Real Honesty with John Ritland, does great content. He was at the Wrestle Dream show the other day, so check out his on-site live report from the pay-per-view on his channel. His first question was, speaking of Wrestle Dream, how does Wrestle Dream compare to the last 2 years of AEW pay-per-views in terms of quality and crowd interaction? Side note, since I was in attendance for it, I'm curious how the crowd came across at home, because it was loud at times in the arena. No, you guys were great. I know you had mentioned you were at Collision the day before. We were talking on Twitter, and you mentioned, John, that the crowd was dead at points, and the Collision show was whatever. I mean, it wasn't a bang-up show, and it wasn't like the stellar show. The crowd was quiet for the most part, and it was a smaller crowd. They got more people in the building for the pay-per-view the next night that you were also at, and it was just a great show. I mean, the length of these shows is always the issue, but I'm not going to complain about that anymore because it's just expected. It's supposed to go 4 hours. I get it. But they closed on a great note. They got the people into it. The main event was awesome. A lot of great undercard matches. Really no bad stuff on the show at all, to be honest with you. Like some stuff I didn't care too much for, like Starks and Yuta, like who gives a shit. It was a quality match, but like really doesn't need to be on the pay-per-view. But overall, the crowd came across great. The show was enjoyable. I've seen people say it was one of the best AEW pay-per-views of all time. It might have been. I don't know, maybe just because the build wasn't amazing. I just feel like the build to All Out a couple years ago was better, and it had more hype, and it delivered. All Out 2021 will still be, to me, the best pay-per-view they've ever done. This might be in the... It's got to be in the top 5. I don't think it was the best pay-per-view they've ever done. Maybe that's just my own personal enjoyment of the show, and I really enjoyed the show, but like, they just do, there's so much, it's almost at a thing where it's like, there's so much great wrestling where it's almost hard to say, I don't know, because it was a great wrestling show, but I want more moments and more, great stories told, and there was a lot of all of that, but just not as much as All Out, I thought. But anyway, we're not really comparing here. I don't know if I have a Mount Rushmore of AEW pay-per-views. All Out would be up there. This would come close. So I would probably say easily in the top 5 shows. Top 3 might be pushing it because I feel like they say every show is one of their best shows. I wouldn't even say All In was among their best shows ever. That was probably in the middle somewhere. It was a good house show, and it was a very enjoyable show, but not their best show. This was better than those. This might be their best pay-per-view of the year. I don't think it's even a might. I think it was. It was definitely better than All Out, which I liked. It was a great show. Better than All In. Forbidden Door was great too. Definitely better than Double or Nothing. And I liked Revolution. But it was up there, though. Wrestle Dream was a great show, and you guys came across great in the arena. Your second question, clearly Edge, or rather Copeland, won't go too long in AEW. I mean, we don't know, actually. I mean, he could be... Well, he says, but do you think it'll last a year or two? What feuds or matches do you want to see him have while he's there? Yeah, I think he will be there a couple years. He's not washed up, so I mean, he could go at least 3 years. But the interesting thing is that anytime anyone ever signs with AEW, they always say, oh, so-and-so has signed a multi-year deal. Have they said that about Edge? Have they said that he signed a multi-year deal? I don't think so. My guess is that he will be there. I mean, there's so many people and so much stuff for him to do there. Excuse me, that I don't think that he's only there for 6 months. I don't think he's there for a year. Could he end his career at All In? Maybe. Yeah, that's very possible. Them singing On This Day in fucking Wembley Stadium, that'd be sick. I think he'll be there for 3 years, because I could see him thinking that he'll be done in a year, but then he's enjoying himself too much and he extends it for another 2 or 3 years. He was in WWE for 3.5 years. So I could see him being in AEW for 3 years. He's already almost 50, if not 50. I mean, isn't he 50 now? I think he's 50 now. I mean, Sting's in there fucking 60 whatever, so, I mean, it's not that out of the ordinary. He might not be full-time in a couple years, but, yeah, I think it'll go 3 years. You said a year or two. I'm thinking 3. His last question, non-wrestling related. Since it's Scary Movie Month, are there any current horror movies that you'll be watching or any classics you'll watch before October is over? Oh, I just answered this question a couple minutes ago. In addition to the movies I already mentioned, I like watching all of those. The Halloween movies. I haven't seen all the Friday the 13th, so I'm going to go back and watch some of the ones that I haven't seen. I've seen some of the worst ones and some of the best ones as well. Those are just, some of them are so bad they're great. So I like watching those. I will watch those. I am going to go see the Five Nights at Freddy's movie with Alexis, and she's a big Five Nights at Freddy's fan, so we're going to go see it when it comes out in a couple weeks. I know it's also on Peacock, but she wants to see it in theaters. Beyond that, I don't think there's any movies coming out when it's fucking insane to me. I don't think anything major is coming out on the Friday the 13th, which is wild. That to me is just crazy. Because how often does that happen? Yeah, I don't know. I think, I'm trying to think of other movies I'll be watching. I actually did not see Hocus Pocus 2. I think I got asked that last year, did I watch it? I actually didn't get a chance to, but I will be watching it soon. I rewatched the first one every year, but I just rewatched the first one. I'm going to rewatch that one. I'm going to start the second one. I'm going to watch the second one soon, and I'll report back on how it was or how I thought it was. I know you watched it last year, John, and never got a chance to see it, so I'll be watching that one soon, too. At noob_n_co TV, which faction breakup storyline is getting boring? The Bloodline, the Judgment Day, or Damage Control? I'm pretty sure, or pretty much, getting tired of all the Damage Control breakup story the most. Don't get me wrong, I like Io Sky, but Bayley is an annoying leader in not letting Io get the spotlight. Definitely Damage Control. The Judgment Day stuff is still interesting. The Bloodline stuff is getting tiresome, but that's because Roman's not around. I mean, at least they're losing members. Damage Control is still in the same state. They're still in the same state they've been in for like 6 months, where they're teasing tension, but no one has left the group. No one has turned down anyone. Judgment Day, same thing, but the McDonough thing makes it interesting. They've at least added a member, kind of, an honorary member, so to speak. The Damage Control one, I mean, Io's got to go out on her own. She's not benefiting from being with Bayley at this point. She's got to be her own person. So yeah, that one to me has got to, that one's got to wrap up soon. And they probably won't as long as Dakota Kai is injured, and that might be for a while, so it's probably not wrapping up anytime soon, unfortunately. Back to Iwagu91, have you noticed the pattern of Mustafa Ali being unable to challenge for a title due to unfortunate circumstances, and someone else taking his place to win the title? Yeah, you're talking about when he was in the Elimination Chamber, or was supposed to be back in 2019, Kofi took his spot, won the title of WrestleMania. You're talking about Money in the Bank that year, when he was supposed to win Money in the Bank, I think, and then Brock won instead. There might have been another opportunity, but definitely in NXT, on No Mercy, he got fired before he could face Dominic, and he was supposed to win the championship. I mean, that makes sense. Would they have taken the belt right off of him like they did Trick Williams last night? Probably. I actually think it works better for this story for Trick to win the belt and not Mustafa. I think Mustafa is great, but Trick winning the belt, to me, made more sense, and him losing it quickly is fine, because they're telling a story with him and Carmelo and Judgment Day and whatever, so that doesn't really bother me. Last two questions. Thoughts on next Tuesday's stacked NXT show. This is from Matt Collin _McAndrew, by the way. Thoughts on next Tuesday's stacked NXT show, and did WWE reveal it too soon, given AEW can announce more things tomorrow through Saturday? No, I mean, they have to announce stuff on NXT. That's when people are watching. Announcing stuff on social media is not as effective. They can always add more stuff, but what more can you fucking add to a show that'll have Paul Heyman, John Cena, Asuka, and, who was the other person? Asuka? Oh, and John Cena. John Cena, Paul Heyman, Asuka. Wasn't there another person? Oh, Cody Rhodes. Cody Rhodes is also going to be on the show. So, no, they can announce more stuff. They don't need to. They did what they should have in stacking the show. Now, it's AEW's turn to kind of stack their show for next Tuesday, which you would expect them to do anyway. They were going to do that regardless. They might even do it more so now that NXT is a pretty star-studded show next Tuesday. At noob_n_co TV, back to them for the last question for the episode. Your thoughts on Edge's debut to AEW at Wrestle Dream over the weekend? I find it very interesting, but I'm pretty much getting tired of wrestling fans calling Edge a traitor. The guy's been in WWE or was in WWE for 25 years. I don't mind Edge going to another promotion. Now, I agree. I mean, it felt weird to me. I would have wanted to see him stay. In retrospect, I think him going to AEW was the better option because it's something we've never seen before. He's got fresh opponents, more stuff to do. Full-time, apparently, wrestling on TV more. I'm all fucking for that. That sounds sick to me. So, in retrospect, I don't really mind. Not that I hated him going to AEW in the first place. He just seemed like a weirder fit. But, it's not that big of a deal. And I think it'll be exciting. I'm looking forward to a fun ride with him. So, yeah, the trader stuff is dumb. I talked about that before. The debut itself was fantastic in terms of the execution, how it came off. I don't think the video was really necessary. They could have just hit the music, and that would have been fine. But everything else seemed great. Him getting the music is sick. I mean, it's just honestly still surreal to me that he's even there. Because he was always a WWE guy. He never left for Impact, never left for Ring of Honor, never worked anywhere else but WWE. And now he's in AEW. So it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool, and I'm looking forward to seeing where they go with it. And people hating on Adam for it, hating on Edge for it, are just fucking stupid. And that's going to do it for episode 514 here today of #AskGSM for Wednesday, October 4th, 2023. Thank you guys for checking out the show. I appreciate it. If you want to send in a question to the show, you can do so by tweeting me on the Twitter machine at WrestleRant with the #AskGSM. Find me on Facebook as well, facebook.com/gram.gsm.matthews. Drop a comment on the post I usually put up on Tuesday nights, if not on the wall itself. And last but certainly not least, drop your question down below in the comment section on this very video. I'll include your question in next week's edition. Have an awesome one, guys. Enjoy the weekend. Enjoy everything coming up in the next week. A lot to look forward to. I know I'm excited, and I'll catch your ass down the road.